everyone. Welcome. I'm Naomi, head of platform at SNSBC, and today I get to kick off episode 3 of Go to Market for Dev. What I like to do at the beginning, we'll see if it works this time, is to share a poll just so that we can see who is interested in covering what for this episode. So you should see it in the middle of your screen. We have a couple, a handful of options here. If one of them calls out to you as a focus area for you, your startup, please select it and it will help us to know what to dive in on more. All right, I'll give it a few more seconds. So if you haven't yet, get yours in, but I do see some trickling through. All right, so sharing the results now. It looks like we have two top picks, the top one being building community around your product, and then the other being building a repeatable outbound motion. So these are great topics for us to dig deeper into in our questions with Zach. I'm joined here as always by Tim Chen and Apurva Pandey, who will incorporate these two into our focus areas with Zach. And that is our guest today, who's built one of the most loved developer tools by kind of doing the unfashionable thing, tackling a category everyone kind of considered solved. Zach Lloyd is the co-founder and CEO of Warp. He started as a principal engineer at Google, led Google Sheets, and then went and reimagined the terminal from scratch. So now, Warp has grown from just a beloved like dev tool into an AI native platform, and they just open sourced it. So Zach, welcome. Feel free to fill in any gaps I missed in your intro.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Yeah, the way I would talk about our journey really, really high level is we started off with the idea of trying to reimagine the experience around the terminal. Um, AI came along, the world has changed, and we've changed with it. At this point, I would describe Warp as like an agentic development environment. So it is a terminal. You use it as a terminal, but it also is a great place to build software with agents interactively. And increasingly, actually, our focus is on how do you help companies automate development. So we have a second product that we launched earlier this year called Oz, which is it's cloud agent infrastructure. It's how we help companies build their own cloud software factories. And it's all tied together with Warp, like the agentic development environment. But like our mission is just like helping developers ship better software more quickly. And the way that things are going is like more and more of that is being done by agents.
Yeah, that's great. And just as a reminder to everyone who's joining live, you can submit additional questions for Zach for us to weave in through Q&A. But other than that, I'm sure there's a lot of questions around us, so I'll let Tim and Apurva take questions from here.
Awesome. Zach, welcome. Excited to dig into your journey. And you've had an incredible run from creating, as you mentioned, right, a very terminal native collaboration platform where Warp started to more of an agentic development platform where you're today. Maybe take us back to when you started. Like the terminal is one of the oldest interfaces in computing.
Yes.
What convinced you to feel that this deserved a company around it?
It's a great question. I've been a developer for a really long time. I'm getting pretty old. I've always used the terminal. I've never like loved it, but I've always worked with other developers who were excellent at it. And it's one of the two main tools people use to build software. And I just had sort of personal conviction that a better user experience for myself could exist. I thought that if I want something that's a little bit more intuitive and works more like a modern app, there's probably other developers as well who would benefit from that. I wanted to build something that I thought could have big impact, and so picking one of the two daily use tools, so I would think of that as like the terminal and the code editor to try to focus on improving could have big impact across all developers. Um, and so that's like what got me excited to work on it, honestly, was just like I think I can build a cooler, more useful thing here. The business model was always the hard part with this with Warp, the company. The original business model was build collaboration features and team features around the terminal. Um, the way that we sequenced product development was actually first try and build something for individual users. It's just much easier to get adoption on a single user product than it is to get adoption a team at a time. And so the first sort of year of building Warp, year and a half, it was exclusively just like, can we build something that individuals want to use? Then we did start layering on a bunch of team and collaboration features, which like I would say never were like a runaway viral success, but the fortunately for us, the whole world changed as far as like what sort of technology was changing around us with AI and agents. And so, we leaned more and more into that direction for our business. And like there's no way I could foresee what the world would look like in 2020 when we started the company. The collaboration and team features kind of interestingly like have actually proven to be valuable in a world of agents. Agent development is actually, I predict, going to become much more of a team sport from an individual sport. And so I'm glad we actually built those things. It's kind of lucky. But yeah, that's like in broad strokes what the journey has been. It's been like a great individual user terminal adapted for agents, and now more and more we're focusing on automating development with agents.
That's super helpful. And when you think of the individual user, I think one of the interesting things is starting from your own pain point. And like every developer company needs to ask this question first, right? Who would be the first set of folks who would love the product? And
Yeah,
that could range from, I think, engineers at startups, it could be AI enthusiasts. And that time it was early. AI journey was still early at that point. There could be like junior developers, more casual developers, vibe coders in today's world, or professional developers. And I think Warp's positioning has always been around professional developers. Could you talk
correct.
about like what inspired that? And I think your background re-architecting Google Sheets kind of shows like that you've been in the professional development journey yourself. And that kind of enables you to kind of think in that lens, but curious to understand like how do you figure out your first set of folks who love the product?
Great question. So yeah, so for one thing, like I said, I'm coming from my own experience. I've been a professional developer for a long time. Just in terms of like picking the customer, the other option would be sort of like non-developers or prosumers. I just have felt strongly that like the if you're building a developer tool, you should be thinking hard about like what is the user of that tool going to be building with it and how valuable is that? And I think that the corpus of software that is built by like pro devs is generally more valuable. It's driving more enterprises forward, businesses forward than software that is being driven by sort of prosumers. It's kind of another reason for our agent product in particular. We've also focused on professional developers. We don't really focus and compete with companies like Lovable or Replit or I'm not like a big like vibe coding person. I'm much more interested in like how do you help more high quality software exist in the world. That tends to be software that has like businesses behind it, honestly, whether it's a consumer business or an enterprise business. So for me, it was always like pretty easy. I wanted to focus on the professional segment. Um, you when we first started, um, we tried having our friends use Warp. This is kind of just like an interesting side story. And like our friends didn't care about it. And so when we first got traction for real, and like this is what I think every early stage startup should be thinking about. It's like, um, do you have people who actually want your product? You got to figure that out very early. We got great signal from launching on Hacker News and the first day that we like launched even a marketing website around like what Warp was, what it was good for, who it was for, we got 10,000 developers to sign up that day. And so it's interesting. It wasn't like our friends. It was like you got to find like the customer base that is interested in what you're doing and validate it very early. And so for us, it was going where professional developers hang out.
So let's talk about your viral launch, I guess, right? Today, probably more important than ever, everybody is trying to get viral growth, right?
Yes.
And this sort of idea, like we want to be able to launch to Hacker News or something similar. We're gonna everybody to sign up this beta. And maybe so let's talk about why you think you got the reaction you got. Because I was going backwards into the one of the earliest investor updates you sent. I remember
Yeah.
looking at I'm just putting it in front of me. I was remembering those times, right? Could we talk about a sequencing? I think you don't have the product yet to
Yeah.
use yet, right? The launch was purely we exist for what reasons, right? And so maybe can we talk about like why do you choose to launch at that time? And how did you word it? And why do you think you got the reaction you got, which is a pretty successful launch for sure.
It was definitely successful. The initial Warp launch, even into the waitlist, I want to say it was like one of the top 100 Hacker News launches ever. And then like the real launch that we did was also up there. Um, why do I think we got that reaction? So we were, I guess like we picked a broad tool. So if we had launched like, oh, it's a Kubernetes optimization thingamajig or whatever, like it's that would appeal to some like narrow slice of developers, but terminals every developer uses, and like it happens to be a tool that developers have like very strong opinions about. And so we were also somewhat controversial, I would say, like just in terms of, oh, you guys are changing this thing that is sacred to my workflow that I have spent, countless hours customizing my my ZSH setup and like whatever my prompt is XYZ. And so it's just like this isn't going to be true for every developer company, but we happened to pick a thing that touched a nerve for a lot of different developers. We also, the way that we framed it, we talked a bunch about how we were building it. And so, Warp is built in Rust. And so developers, I think, are unique as a customer base that actually doesn't just care about the what, but they care about the how. And so talking about like the technical architecture of it got people interested. Those are two things I think that just like, we kind of had to like know your customer. Like developers care about terminals, they care about Rust. And we're like, and so that got a bunch of interest. Now it wasn't pure vaporware, I would say. Like we had started, we had a working version of Warp internally. And we were using it as a team internally. It just had like a ton of rough edges. And so the way that we wanted to like validate, like go about validating, was this a good product idea, was like A, is it something that we would use ourselves? And so we were actively dogfooding it. And then B, is it something that there's like external user demand for? And the Hacker News launched, validated at least like people were somewhat interested in it. And then what we started doing after that was like letting people off in cohorts. Like we would let off like 500 people a week or something into Warp and see how they like basically see did they engage and did they retain. And like at first those cohorts were pretty bad from the perspective of like there's just like a lot of bad bugs or missing features. And the framework that we would talk about this with was like we were, missing, like we had a bunch of showstoppers where it's like you come in and you can't bootstrap your shell successfully. And it's like, well, see ya, I can't even like try this thing. And so doing it with like letting people, 500 people in a week, which we kind of earned the ability to do by doing this waitlist launch, let us see over time was the engagement and retention and all that stuff getting better. And it was only once we got to a spot where we felt like people would come in and stick around and use it 3 days, 4 days, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, where we like, let's try to actually grow it. And I totally recommend that for startups because you can't grow a thing that people don't stick with using. And so finding some way to like get to like a positive retention and engagement metric was really important for us. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So I think it's trying to like
Yeah.
find a balance between how do I actually start garnering the interest and people to know we exist
Yes.
while your product is still early, right? That is not an
Yes.
easy product to build, by the way. I remember.
It's
uh,
it's very hard. It's very hard because like you can run into traps on both ends. Like you can launch, you can wait way too long while you're perfecting it for yourselves and end up launching a thing that no one cares about. And that's, I think, a very common startup failure mode. Or you can launch something very quickly that's very half-baked around a product that is like a real core part of someone's workflow. And you can try to promote it and promote it, promote it, and people will think your product is bad. And like, so that's a really hard line to walk. But you can fail both ways, I think. I think probably the first way is more common to fail, to be honest, like launching a thing people don't care about. Um, but we tried to have a strategy of like do it, like verify the demand, and then have people come in and like verify the actual product works. And then once we got to a spot where it's like we're retaining, then it becomes more about growing.
And so I want to talk about actually your launch post. I remember there's
Yes.
actually probably two posts.
Okay. I'm trying to
Right?
remember
You're
a
coming
while
out of
ago.
stealth. I feel like there's like more than just one, but
Yeah.
they're not just trying to explain what the new terminal is, right?
Yeah.
Your wording, your positioning, I think is actually fairly interesting. It is worth studying. Like, can you talk about why you created these blog posts? I think one of them is probably the titled the life support one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. There's like why terminal is on life support? Is it worth
Yeah.
saving, right? Another one, remember,
So
is like UX rot or something like that. They're not, there's so many ways they're going to explain a new product you build. You didn't start with this Rust everything and the details. The how warp works actually came much later, right?
I'm trying to remember. If you've looked at it, you probably are more accurate than I am. But I do know I wrote this one post called "The Terminal is on life support. Is it worth saving?" Which is a ridiculous post. Oh, it's still live? That's amazing.
It's still live.
Uh, and that post was garnered to be provocative and get attention and like rile developers a little bit and cut through the noise. And if I actually remember correctly, I don't know if you're looking at this, I think that post got moderated off Hacker News. I, I don't think that we actually like I think it started going up really quickly and then the moderators were like, this is too clickbaity. Like you cannot put this like clickbait crap on Hacker News. Uh, do you remember what the other post was? Like, what was the one that actually got us a bunch of traction? Now,
I think it's the terminal invented the command line. Why was the UX left rot?
okay, that makes more sense. So I think that that like was like just below the bounds of acceptable on Hacker News, and so yeah, like we wanted and this is like a like we wanted to play into like the like is that's not true? Like people because people be like that's not true, and some people are like that's definitely true. That's a great question, and so it's better to back to my early point is like the biggest failure mode is no one cares, I think, for a lot of these things. And so, we were like, let's try something a little bit like that's gonna get people talking. And I think that that worked.
Yeah, and it actually worked, right? People are not
Yeah.
just debating. I remember there was a debate on Hacker News, like, why was this company want to build a terminal? Like,
Yeah.
it
And
was
like,
not mostly positive. I remember
oh no, no,
looking at
no, no. Like
it.
our history on Hacker News, just to be clear, has been controversial. And so the things we've been controversial around are like when we first started Warp, you need to log in to the terminal, and people hated that. Like, but it got people to talk. And then even just the fact that we're like a VC funded company, people hate. And like, we can't do anything about that. And I've always found that extremely ironic because Hacker News is like YC's like this VC's like bulletin board essentially, and like, why are you hanging out there? It's like I cannot believe that. And then we weren't open source, and so but like progressively, like we've changed all these things, and like we've improved the brand, but we did get a lot of mileage around like these like controversial, somewhat negative things. But the way it works on Hacker News, in my experience, is like you get a very vocal minority of people who will post kind of like the negative things. It will create interest. And a bunch of people who don't share those same negative sentiments will be like, let me check this thing out. And it's probably like a 50 to 1 ratio of like the like posters versus the consumers. And so even just by virtue of being, the posters might get you to the top of the thing. And then the people who consume the content will come try out your product and might love it. And so I like again, I think the failure mode is it's fine to be controversial. You know, I don't we're not trying to do this anymore. Like we're past this as a company, I would say. Like at this point we want to just be like a developer brand where people know and love the product and we have like become more and more and more of that. But at the beginning to get people to try it, it's not a bad idea to like have a little bit of controversy.
I think starting with like the Hacker News controversy to kind of where you are today, and there have been like many phases in between, right? Like right from being kind of terminal first to kind of growing that community to
Yep.
kind of becoming prompt first, and
Yep.
then kind of open sourcing your uh, both your like client as well as just the terminal itself. Uh, and I think the business model has also evolved from being more agent and orchestration focused.
Yes.
I'm wondering like what led to that evolution, at least on the open sourcing side today, because a lot of companies start open source initially and then become commercial. And I think over here, you've had a bunch of traction, a lot of usage, and people started to use it as an agentic platform. And now you open sourced it. So what was that motivation?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have almost 1 million active developers using Warp now, which is like it's a pretty big number of developers. Like just to set context, like Codex, OpenAI's product, they're bragging that they have 5 million, which is more than 1 million. But they're OpenAI and they're spending gajillions of dollars trying to get to people to use their thing. And so I think we've actually done a great job getting developers to be active users. And these aren't downloads. We've had like millions and millions of downloads. These are active users in Warp. And so continuing to grow that active user number is actually really strategically important for us. So answering your question, um, and at this point, I think like being open source is a real advantage there. Because all of a sudden, like we have this big community of users who can like participate, they can make the product better. If there's something that they want to see in it, they can come and literally code it. It just is like it gets developers excited. And so it's just like a big positive community thing to help us grow our user base. The second reason we did it now, I talked a little bit to Tim on this another podcast, was like we thought that agents could do a great job managing it. And so the business like that we have right now, the business is our agent, Warp Agent, and Oz, our orchestration platform. And the terminal is like our top of funnel essentially. And so it's how we make the brand known. It's how we get people to start associating with Warp. The terminal has always been free. Like we've never put a pay gate in front of using the Warp terminal. We were never planning on doing that. And so open sourcing it doesn't really like take away a paid line of business for us. It just like widens the funnel. And we actually think we can, it gives us a place to like prove that our agents in our orchestration, like our cloud software factory product actually works in public. And I'm tweeting about this all the time. It's like everyone's talking about building cloud software factories. Well, like here's one. It's a 60,000 star GitHub repo that is being run primarily by agents, and it forces us to make our agents better, and it forces us to make that agent factory better. And so those are the reasons that we did it. And yeah, and then I would say like most of our commercial focus is not around selling the terminal product. In fact, like almost none of it is. It's around selling like our agent and our automated development.
And how's the commercial like person who's like paying for your product changed since then? Because with the prompting piece, like you can make an argument then that a lot of like product first pipe coders could also start to use the product. Have you seen that shift at all, or do you continue to see uh, professional developers being kind of the core audience?
The shift that's happening for us is we're moving more from individuals to enterprises.
Right.
So at the beginning, when we were starting to monetize and our revenue was growing pretty quickly, it was almost entirely individuals like paying for our agent in our terminal. And increasingly, it is enterprises paying for like a software factory product that uses our agent and helps them, automate parts of their development cycle. And so it's a different customer, different use case. We're still growing the self-serve revenue, but like that competitive landscape is pretty crowded, just being candid. And like we don't really want to compete with like Cloud Code and Codex for individual users, especially because they have these I would say like just plans that are much cheaper than ours. And like that's their right. Like they have like these subscription plans where you get $10,000 of API usage for $200 as a subscriber. And it's like, we can't do that. And so they can do that. Where we're trying to carve out our business is much more of like a neutral, like like cloud software factory or cloud orchestration platform where you can use any of these underlying models, and it just like helps companies get confidence that they're shipping software with like high ROI. We're moving away from like inference reselling as a business. Like it's not a it's like a low margin kind of race to the bottom business where it's hard for a company at the application layer to compete. And I think a lot of companies that are growing their revenue really fast off of inference reselling are going to have like a reckoning. And so like trying to find a spot where it's like, we're kind of ambivalent to where the inference comes from. The tokens I view as like they're eventually going to be commodity, and we want to be something that sticks around even in a commodity token world. So that, there's just like it's a fast changing business landscape that we're in, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
I think one thing that like comes from this is kind of this idea of like automation, right? Which is what you refer to an automation for the business, not just
Yes.
for like the individual developer over here. And I think of automation of the business. One thing that the coding agents is doing is starting from autocomplete to kind of writing your code. I think what they don't do yet, and are you need harnesses around each of those like specializations, is like writing specs or like code reviewing and like doing like troubleshooting of code and all of that. Do you imagine, like, since you have the Warp workstation, you imagine owning different pieces of those workflows or for the SDLC, or how are you envisioning this product for yourself and for your users?
Yeah, so this is like exactly what we have and are continuing to invest in. So the way I see it working is like, let's say you're a company and you ship software, you need some version of a internal software factory where agents are helping go from ideas to ship product. And I think that there's like a fairly universal workflow for what that looks like. It looks like agents triaging issues and then depending on the outcome of that triage, agents writing specs, agents doing implementation, agents doing code review, agents doing computer use verification. There's a shipping step, and then agents monitoring the thing in production. You're not going to automate 100% of the software you're building. It's the agents aren't there yet. And so you want I think you want like some baseline amount that you can automate today. And so the way I'm just thinking about this is like, let's say you can automate 20% of the tickets that are coming into your system. Great. You then want a system that you can iterate on and move that number up over time. So that if it's this year, it's 20%, next year it's 50%, or I don't know how quickly it will increase. And you want the ability for humans to be involved at every step where you can kind of like move stuff into the factory, pull it off when a human needs it. And so the shape of this product and this product category is kind of becoming more and more obvious to me. Like I think it's just like that's what companies should be building. We have been building towards this for the past year, just about, and are crystallizing and like we have a bunch of companies that we've deployed this with. And our advantage in this space is that we have this big developer audience by which we can sort of like, move people into this automated flow, like part of the way at the time. Like if you're like a YC company, like, and there's a lot of companies who are trying to do this, like this is not a space that is like people see this. What most companies don't have is like the developer awareness or like the hands-on keys tool that developers are living in. And so that's like our bet is that we can take advantage of this great developer brand, this ecosystem, our open source project, and use that to help companies deploy this better. But I don't know, it's definitely the way things are going for sure.
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating.
Yeah, it's wild.
So
I don't
I
know what
think,
developers are going to do.
yeah, developers,
Crazy.
even the word developers has been way broadened, right? People don't use the terminal just to write Rust or front end code, right? I just want to use Claude, and the user base has broadened quite a bit, and workflows has broadened quite a bit as well. And I think maybe you can talk about your changing the positioning of your company and product, right? Went from
Yep.
Work Developer Terminal to Oz, this sort of factory. And like you mentioned just earlier, you want to eat more workflows, right? And it
Yep.
starts to span out. So how do you find the right balance between, okay, I don't want people to just think of just a terminal company or just this or that. Like, does Oz still be very focused on original developer audiences, or we try to like broaden it to like a more thing? what have you learned so far of this like changing your brand sort of mid-flight?
It's a great question. I'd say it's a thing that we spend a ton of time talking about. Um, the it's tricky. So it's like most developers who've heard of Warp have heard of it as a terminal. That's just a fact. That's like what our brand is known for. Some developers have come to us at a point where they've been looking for an agentic development solution. So they're like more naturally predisposed to try our agent features. Um, Most people like Oz is a new product and it's like it's probably not nearly as well known. And so I can't give you the answer. I can give you the questions. Like questions that we've had are like, should Oz be its own separate brand or should Oz be Warp platform, for instance? And we don't really know. Like we went with Oz because we thought there was too much too much preconceived notion around Warp just being a terminal. We don't want to lose like all the brand equity that we've built around Warp Terminal. And so it's this dance of like trying to elevate Warp into just like it's a great thing for developers and it has these various like product elements that can help you with trying to do different stuff. But I'll be honest, it's like it's been very, very challenging for us. Like, do we call it a terminal? Do we call it an agentic development environment? We actually invented this category, agentic development environment. Like there's a whole bunch of ADEs on the market. And so I wish I had a better answer for you here. It's a thing that's like an ongoing struggle for you. I don't actually have like the answer, but we have to keep expanding what the product does because like like we want to go to where there's the most value and there's the most value in terms of is like in this like development automation endpoint and maintain staying just a terminal or staying just an interactive workbench just for the sake of that's what we started at, we can't do that. Like we have to do the thing that's most valuable. And so we have to evolve the product and we're trying to figure out how do you like bring the world along for the ride.
Yeah, and it's a challenge for every company that exists on Earth that started maybe mid LLM flight taking off, or probably even your pre LLM taking off. It's like the identity crisis is so real.
Like like Linear, I think is a great example. I don't know if you know that company.
Yeah,
Like they're trying mid-flight to change what they are. They don't want to be task tracking software. They want to be agent orchestration software. And so it's just hard.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're trying to do it. Notion's trying to do it. Like a lot of tools are just like if you started before AI, it's like a mixed blessing because you have the customers and the brand, but now you need to change the conception.
yeah, yeah. And it's this really balance between how much of the existing user base just upselling or like expanding their capability versus who is actually coming in to use this. And Linear is a good example. They're talking about writing code for you and fixing
Yes.
issues.
Like that's not what they were.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that is interesting, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody has this sort of like, I want people to know us for a bigger thing, given AI is giving us all the superpower. But then
Yes.
the market doesn't want to know everyone has the possibility to can write code for me. That doesn't make my life easier
Right.
as a company to know where do we put how do we focus? Do everybody just write code everywhere and let's just kind of like forget about whatever? And so that, I don't know, maybe the question here is like, have you found what's been working for you in terms of Warp becoming Oz and becoming workflows? Do you see your users find different ways to help get you into a more broader sense in the current company that are using Warp? Or have you found you have to find maybe even different engagement? Like you haven't even used Warp yet. You maybe heard of Warp, but you want Oz. And we're sort of like this any touch point you come in, we will find a way to work
Yeah.
with you, sort of like feel. I wonder like what is
Yeah.
successful
I can
cases
talk
working
about
for
it
you?
more concretely from like a go-to-market strategy. So we we now do a combination of like product-led growth into a sales motion where we will have teams that are paying for our agent to use it interactively, and we will reach out to them and we'll be like, it's cool that you're using it this way. but also like the way that you're going to want to position, like build software is through setting up an internal software factory. And so why don't you also take a look at Oz and we can do a pilot with you. So we can leverage our PLG base and have been doing this successfully a lot actually to sort of like through like a sales outreach. We can try to get people directly from the product into Oz. And so that's like there's product features that help with that. So for instance, we have this like you can split a task into a multi-agent orchestration flow and have some of those agents working in the cloud. And so there's like a literal product on ramp into cloud agents, which is cool and is driving adoption. And then we also have like a pure sales motion where we do account-based marketing. We leverage our network and try to get conversations and try to identify like our ICP and get to someone who might be leading like an AI developer tools team or VP of engineering and talk to them about what their biggest problems are and just like straight up do a like, hey, this is, does this it's like more of a traditional sales motion where you do a meeting and a demo and then like get into a POC. We're doing all of those things. And they're all working to some extent. Like uh defining the ideal customer is really important because like some companies, and actually a lot of like what you might think of as like forward thinking tech companies, like for instance, Ramp, who's a customer of ours, like they don't want Oz because they're building this. And so like our biggest competition with it is like build versus buy. And so you have to be like smart around like who's going to benefit from this but not want to build it. And so for us actually are kind of like our anti-customer is a team with like is a company with a big developer productivity team, hundreds of engineers working on internal developer productivity tools. We're not going to be able to sell this to them. So we need to find people who actually want the outcome of this, but aren't going to build it themselves. Does that make sense?
It's definitely working. I think till like few months back, and I don't know what the numbers are, like $1 million in net new ARR in like a week to 10 days. I'm assuming that's even higher than that. So definitely working. Curious, like beyond the initial Hacker News launch, what are the
Yep.
kind of channels that are working for PLG for you beyond like, and we can talk about sales after that.
So the PLG, the way that we get the user growth right now is honestly, we don't do like paid marketing. So it's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of like what you might consider like developer experience. So um, it is engaging with people on GitHub. It's engaging with people in our community Slack. It's a lot of social, like doing social demos. We have a really big YouTube following. So we have over 100,000 YouTube subscribers. We're one of the top I want to say 5 developer companies in the world on YouTube, which is a really interesting thing to do. And so we do a lot of content, and that content isn't necessarily specific to Warp. Like I just had a tweet go, I don't know, you call it semi-viral, over 1,000 likes yesterday, and it was like around how do you set up like a self-improvement loop using skills. And so doing this type of content where it's like helping people become agentic and helping companies become agentic does a lot to sort of help us. Um, I'll say one thing that hasn't worked that we like I really have wanted it to work forever is the sort of like team-based viral loop, kind of like how Figma or Google Docs might grow, where you have people like sharing links to things and setting up internal teams. Developer tools are just too much of an individual sport for is unfortunately what I've like maybe we haven't done the product right, but like we have not been able to get that loop to work. I wish it would. And so it comes back to like a lot more of like, yeah, like that developer experience, probably word of mouth is our single biggest thing. We've tried various like swag-based referral programs. We've tried like everything, you name it. We've tried paid ads, that's not worth it for a developer product. And so biggest thing is make the product work really well, make your docs really good, put out good engaging content, be in the conversation on social, be responsive to user issues. Those types of things matter the most.
And once you see like developers like adopting the product and using it on the PLG side, At
Yep.
what time do you decide like it might be a team thing that we can sell it top down? Or it doesn't matter if the organization may or may not be using the PLG tool. You could also sell it to a net new organization, which might have a smaller productivity team or might not have a productivity team at all internally
It,
that could benefit from it. How do you think of top down after
yeah,
that?
it's a great question. So we certainly like it. It's certainly easier to go into a company when they have warp users.
Right.
Like just like we could be like, you have hundreds of people who are using our product either paid or sometime or even free, just like that gets you in the door much easier. There's certain places where we'll still pursue sales even where we don't have that. Like for instance, some places like have rules against using Warp like as individuals, like banks or whatever regulated places. And we would still try to like do a sales conversation. Um, it just helps with the flow. It's best if they're a paying team. That's like the best, easiest upgrade thing because then it's like, look, you're already paying for this. We can maybe get you a better deal on it, or we can get you better security controls. You can like prepay for some inference credit. Like there's all sorts of levers you can pull if someone's already paying for you versus if they're free. Um, and so yeah, the short answer is like, yes, we use that. Um, you can kind of because a lot of people log into Warp, you can kind of like identify as is this like this is like their CTO is using this. That's cool. So you can do smart things around that within the realms of like developers are very privacy conscious and they don't want you like snooping around what they're doing. So you kind of have to be careful on the creepy side. But if you're going to like a CTO or a VP engineer or whatever, like you can look for signals in the user base. So we do all of those things.
I think one of the incredible things about Warp is kind of the amount of effort that you've put in over the last 5+ years to kind of build like all the features that kind of embed in developer workflows that kind of makes the product pretty hard to replace. Although I think in the developer world, one of the things that like every founder or investor worries about is like how quickly can this be replaced, right? And I think
Totally.
especially in today's world where like the labs are all working on coding agents, that is and they're well capitalized and the number of developers are growing that are using those agents. I'm curious, like, how do you think about retention over here from a product first principles way of thinking?
Yeah, so it's an awesome question. I guess I would just say, first of all, I agree with the premise in the sense of like the we've spent 5 years building this really hard app in Rust. However, like that might have been a moat in and of itself 5 years ago. I do not consider that much of a moat at this point. Actually, like the cost of building software is going way down. Uh, I don't think you can have like difficulty of building a product, just a pure client-side software product is a defensible thing. And that's actually one of the reasons that we open source was like, this isn't, the IP isn't the thing. It's the community, it's the user base, it's the excitement. And it's like thinking of structural things that you as a business can do that your competitors might not be willing to do. And so you have to like lean into that. And like, Cloud Code's not open source. They like unintentionally open sourced it for one day. They're not like an open company, and nor like even OpenAI, who again we work with both of these. They're great in their own ways. Their Codex is not open source, the actual app. And more to the point, like their strategy can't be around like facilitating everyone else's models. And so our that means like our strategy should be around that in terms of like you have got to look for differentiated places that the biggest, most well-funded, biggest branded competitors just for structural business reasons won't do. And like I don't imagine a world where Anthropic is pushing products that ship other people's models. Like maybe they will. Like that would be a real big change, but their whole business model and like their rapid revenue growth comes from like reselling their tokens and same with OpenAI. And I think honestly now Cursor is like a model lab. And so you have to look at the stakeout ground that other people aren't going to replicate. And so I think if you want lasting moat, it's like it's got to be some lasting structural advantage like that. It could be like some advantage that you have in terms of data. It could be
Mhm.
some advantage that you have in terms of like commercial relationships. Like I would say like Stripe, like it's going to be very, you're not going to vibe code a Stripe replacement, but even if you could, it's like it's all about all of the integrations and like it's just got to be stuff that's like harder to rip out and not like just like a product advantage. So I fully agree with that. And like we're trying as hard as we can to look at like where do we get those kinds of advantages.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And as you know, the whole world of founders and people and everybody is trying to find those gaps, right?
Yeah.
So we're truly, I don't want to call it the gold rush moment, but it feels like we're rushing something. Token rush moment, I guess, can we get all the tokens, as much as we can accumulated into our little house? And I think the narrative of software becoming more free is obviously real, but we still need to build software, right? Products are
Yes.
still built on software. And maybe to zoom out of just pure work, and what have you seen? Um, Good examples of companies that are doing really good job at sort of PLG, getting people's attention in more recent days that
Yes.
can point to
It's
like,
a,
you know what, like we started 5 years ago. We did our marketing this way. This is one of maybe a few examples that are doing really good job today. Do you have any of those at all? Or
I'm a big fan of the company Granola. I don't know if I mentioned them. Do you guys know that product in that company?
yes, we do. VC somehow know those products, unfortunately. Yeah.
Disclaimer, I'm a small angel investor and I know the founder, but like it's interesting because I don't really think there's product moat. I mean, they've done like an awesome job with the product. It's like a delightful experience and they had this like great product insight around these meetings are better if you don't have like a black box that's sit looking at you saying it's recording. That's like really the killer feature to me. But then they've done like such a good job with the brand and with like being synonymous with the definition of that category of like, I don't know what you want to call it, like a background meeting recorder or something, that they've somehow managed to get super good growth out of it. So like they're doing it, and they're going against like Notion has a version of that product. Notion's a bigger company. I don't know if Anthropic's gonna launch like I'm sure I don't think it's that hard to launch that product, just to be honest. But like they somehow have managed to, I think, come across as a leader in that space.
Which is so interesting. We can't even tell what it
You
is, right? For
like can't tell what.
like for a lot of probably products that are like really hardly complex like a Stripe, right? You can still point to maybe integrations,
Like
regulation.
how are, oh, you mean how are they doing
Yeah,
it?
how are they gotten to be able to beat out every single company already bundled a note taker and you still able to win out in that space, right?
I
I'm
don't
not saying they're
know.
waiting forever, but they are certainly at, perception wise and traction to prove that they're growing quite immensely.
Yeah, they're doing great.
I can talk for myself. I
Do,
think user
yeah,
experience.
I'm curious if anyone has the theory of like how they've
I
done
think it's
this.
trust, right? Because with anything that takes notes, you want to trust it and you want to know that everything is accurate, and then the user experience needs to be as seamless as possible. I think those are the two things that stand out for me, especially.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a
So I
fair
guess maybe
assessment.
that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll ask that question because I feel like in today's world, a lot of new founders, I think our pod talking about your launch and what you did is a definitely huge inspiration for a lot of people. And a lot of people are looking at how the AI world has completely changed how people should launch and think about products as a totality.
Yeah.
And it definitely seems like probably the best products, it doesn't even matter if how many people will be launching it because you just assume there's going to be 20, 30, 50 other similar products in the market that what you're doing are going to be there, right? Versus maybe to develop a terminal, there's not many warps though. You're crazy enough to do this, right? This requires a crazy brain with a crazy person with a lot of white hair to do it, right? It feels like today, no product is safe, right? That you're gonna have people coming in and doing exactly what you're doing. So if features and code becoming more free, then maybe it's the things you don't see. right? The quality of the product when you do the meeting notes, those are not just a visible UI, but actually the infrastructure behind to allow it to do that. But I'm sure there's also the perception, the marketing, the distribution as it plays into it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's kind of leads into a question like, what kind of advice is you giving people that are starting companies today? What are something you're advising people to do more to help them be in a winning position since you are kind of one of them right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess just to tie a bow on that last point was like my position isn't that product doesn't matter. My position is that like product is like having a great product is like necessary but not sufficient. Whereas in the past, maybe like you could just win on that. Like I and I don't even, actually don't even know if that was ever true, but it's like um uh the products are so easy to replicate now that I think you got to be looking for much more. And so my advice would be to do the you got to do the thought exercise of like how do you win in a world where having a great product isn't enough, and like um and you have to imagine that whatever like software thing you build someone else can build and will build, especially if they see your thing working. And so you need, if you are going to try to do just like a software thing, there needs to be some flywheel that gets you like escape velocity that's hard to copy. Or you should be looking for things that are kind of harder, less obvious, where you're winning based on some structural thing that's not just the quality of the product. Um, I think like, yeah, like I don't know. I don't have a better answer than that. But like the way that companies used to be founded, where it was like, I'm gonna build a SaaS product that does X, that's a vertical thing, that's toast. I wouldn't build a vertical agent. Like this I do see a lot of, an agent for X. Um, I could be wrong here. Like it could be that there's some alpha in that, like, but I'm like any agent for X thing, I'm very like you're in like the line of fire for Anthropic and OpenAI, depending on whether or not they want to go into that space. It might not be a bad bet from the standpoint of maybe they'll just want to acquire you and not build your thing. I've seen some of that with companies that I've invested in. I'm like, why are they being acquired? They could just be like built. But sometimes Anthropic or OpenAI just wants the team, doesn't want to bother building it. Um, yeah, it's a tricky one. I think really hard tech is probably a great place to go. I think if you have the skills to do something that like is engineering in the real world as opposed to just software, that's probably a pretty smart place to go. I think that's going to be the next big tech revolution is going to be around robotics and like bridging the gap between AI and the real world. That's like I'm really excited about. Doing something that's like you kind of can't miss right now if you're doing something that's like deeper in the infrastructure stack for AI, like closer to like chips, data centers, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I would just stay away, like your typical YC software company pitch. I'm not super compelled by right now.
Having spent so much time with developers, do you think there's any
Yeah.
white space left in that at the SDLC itself, or do you think that's really hard to win?
I would, if I were starting a company today, I would not start like what we're doing in Warp and going into the developer space.
Mhm.
Um, I think Warp itself is in a good position because we had a 5 year head start and have a huge user base and like a known developer brand. But I don't know. It's too crowded. There's too many people in it. And I don't know like the differentiated angle that someone should come in. And like I think software development is going to be pretty solved by the current cohort of like Anthropic, OpenAI, hopefully Warp. Like hopefully we're one of the people who help solve it, but I wouldn't enter the race now. I'm biased here, but like that's my
That makes sense. No,
yeah.
it's helpful to hear from you that you're biased, but also appreciate that as an investor. And And thank you so much for being so candid and sharing all the insights with us. And
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
all the founders over here, like whether they are joining live or will see it later, will really value all the lessons that you've learned.
Cool. I hope it's helpful. I'm constantly revising what I think also. So it's like I may say something totally different in a few months, but
That's
this is
great.
what
We'll
I'm
call you
currently.
back. We'll invite you back.
Okay, cool. I hope this was helpful.
For
Thank you
sure.
so
Yeah.
much.
And even if Warp is past spicy Hacker News takes, it's great to see you as a founder and Angel. You still have a number of them.
Yep.
But yes, thank you so much, Zach. This is exactly the kind of conversations that we created Go-to-Market for Dev for. And really generous of you to share the full arc of the story. Tim and Porva, as always, thank you for your thoughtful questions. And for our listeners, if today was useful, the full recording will be on GoToMarket for it's GTMfor.dev, Go-to-Market for Dev, and wherever you listen to your podcast later today, along with our previous episodes. So share it with builders in your world who are navigating go-to-market, and we'll be back next month with another guest going into a different piece of the go-to-market puzzle. But thank you all again for being here. See you next time.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Zach.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.